Well, thank you. That's a very nice applause. I haven't even said anything yet, so that's a good start. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you've heard, my name is Martine Wright, and I'm proud to say that I'm captain now of the Great Britain sitting volleyball team. And thank you. And I did have the huge honour of taking part in the London Paralympics. A dream I've been working towards over the past few years, but that hasn't always been my dream. And 10 years ago now, can't quite believe it's 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, I was on the way to work as an international marketing manager, and I got on a Circle Line tube, and it changed my life forever. I was sat just 4 foot away from one of the suicide bombers that decided to hit London that morning. My family frantically searched for me for 2 days, and they finally found me at the Royal London Hospital, completely unrecognisable. I'd lost both my legs above the knee, lost 80% of my blood, been resuscitated several times, and was in a deep coma. And after 11 days, I came out this coma to look down in my bed and see that my legs were gone. I can't really describe to you how I felt at that moment, but I pretty much felt like my world had ended. I just couldn't believe that out of the millions of people every day that get on the tube, I was the most injured survivor. It seemed so unfair. Now, I'm sure, with all of you here today, I'm sure there's many of you that have either been through something equally traumatic or know of someone that has been through something like that. And I'm sure there's one thing that they would tell you, that there was a turning point that they were faced with. My turning point came on a day when I was supposed to be bridesmaid for my best friend. But instead, I was strong enough for the first time to go to the gym physio at Royal London. And I remember looking around this room and seeing all manner of different people. I saw a girl who had lost, she's a very good friend of mine now, who had lost both her legs, but also both her arms through meningitis. I met other victims of the bombings who might not have been as physically injured as me, but psychologically they were completely traumatised. And this was the day that I found out how many people died that day. 52 people, innocent people, on the way to work had been killed, and I had no idea at all before this point. So for me, I believe this was my turning point, and this was the day that I think I said to myself, Martine, pull yourself together. You got 2 choices. Either you can sit there and feel sorry for yourself and keep asking that question, why me, and decide never to walk again, or decide that life carries on. And yes, it was an awful thing, worse than anything I could have ever imagined, but there are always people worse off than you. I didn't die that day, and I had a choice. I had a choice to live my life, whatever it may hold. So that's when I did start to learn to walk again. I'm just reaching over for the clicker. And as you can see from this picture here, I'm not saying it was the easiest thing in the world. It actually was the hardest thing out of everything. But after a year, I finally got my sea legs. And I think this was the hardest time out of all of it. I was suddenly back to normal life, but not normal as I knew it. So, not being able to live in my flat in London, not being able to go back to my work, having to live with my mum. And I remember this one day where I just couldn't stop crying. And my sister, my older sister, came to me and she said, Martine, what's wrong? And all I kept saying was, all I want to do is walk out this house and go home. All I want to do is walk out this house and go home. And I think when you go through something traumatic, well, for me, the hardest thing to deal with was the memories of how I used to do things before. Suddenly you're one person one day, and then you wake up 11 days later for me, and you find out that you're someone else. So, the thing about change is that a lot of the time we don't know when it's going to happen. We don't plan for it, and it takes us by surprise. And as a result, it's really hard to deal with. sometimes. But I truly believe now that 7-7 was not a matter of the wrong place at the wrong time for me. And I believe it's taken me on a journey that I was always meant to make. And I was, and I still am, determined to make number 7 a positive in my life, as well as the testimony to the 52 people that died. And maybe, just maybe, that number 7 could actually make my life better and more improved. And I believe all of us, every single one of us, need some strategies and techniques that we need to rely on in order to get us through this change, this tragedy sometimes. And funny enough, I have 7 of them. And that's what I call my power of 7. And the first one of these is choices. As I said before, we all have choices. Whatever happens to us in life, we have choices. We have 2 choices a lot of the time. Number 2 is maximising every opportunity. It's all about your personal growth. So in order for me to find that resilience, that strength after what happened, I knew I had to grab every opportunity I could. So again, from learning to fly, to skiing, to jumping out a plane, that wasn't popular with my mum and dad, I tell you. To being awarded the Helen Mollison Award, which was amazing, to learning to dance again, that was a highlight. Who wouldn't like being completely strictified and then being swung round by the lovely Ian Waite for 6 weeks? But what I'm trying to say is that good can come out of bad. And all these things I've done, I would never have done if it weren't for going through the worst time of my life. And we all have choices, as I said. We can sit there and feel sorry for ourselves, or we can get up and say, no, I'm not standing for this, and be determined to get something positive out of it. I believe anything is possible as long as you believe. So number 3 of my power of 7 is embracing change, or change management, as you might want to call it. And if we're all honest, every single one of us in this room is scared of change. But what we need to realise is that change brings opportunity. It stretches us, it challenges us, and it makes us stronger. And I knew I had to accept these changes in order to get something good out of it. And I knew I had to do something as a result of losing my legs. So I was invited to go to a Paralympic Potential Day, where you can go and try all different sports. Pretty much tried everything, but fell in love with sitting volleyball. And as you can see, I'm there with my lucky number 7 on my shirt. And what I love about sitting volleyball is, number 1, you don't play in a wheelchair. It's a great sport. We move constantly round on the floors on our bums. It was actually first called bum ball. Quite an unfortunate name, I believe. Can you imagine that? World Championships in bum ball. But no, they changed it. Thankfully, they changed it to sitting volleyball. Although because we do move constantly round on the floor, we've now adopted the name floor cleaners, which isn't a lot better than mumble. But they're right. By the time that we finished a match, the floor is absolutely gleaming. And not surprisingly, number 4 in my power of 7 is sport and the power of sport. And it's become so important in my life, as well as the opportunity to obviously represent my country in a sport I love in my hometown of London. It's also given me so much more on a physical level. You know, it's got me fit again, and I've discovered muscles in places that I never ever thought existed. Emotionally, you know, it gave me my confidence back. It improved my self-esteem, and it got me out meeting like-minded people. And psychologically, for me, I think this was the most important, and still is. Number 1, it gave me that ambition and drive back that I used to feel at work. But number 2, it gave me a new dream to work towards. And I believe, as I said, it's taken me on a journey that I was always meant to make. And this takes me on to number 5. And my number 5 is teamwork. I have learnt so much from being involved in sport again, and being captain to a bunch of very strong, independent people. See, the thing about us, like many teams, like many of the teams that you're in or you lead or develop, is we were all completely different. Different backgrounds, different cultures, different values, just different walks of life. And we were also a squad of very different ages, not sure whether you can see from the photo, but from 13 years old to 43 years old. So we knew that we were going to be facing some pretty difficult situations in order to embark on our journey, our dream journey of getting to London 2012. So we realised that we were only going to get there if we stuck together, if we worked as a team, and if we agreed on some clear, concise goals and values. And I truly believe that these values here, if we hadn't had them, we would never, ever have got to the London Paralympics. So the first one of these was respect. And we needed to respect people's ability to make the right decisions, allowing everyone to have their own views. We needed to respect the position that we now found ourselves in. We were representing our country in a sport that we loved. The second one was trust. We needed to allow people to be themselves. This was a huge one for us. As I said, we were all very different people, and we needed to trust and believe that everyone was doing everything they could for the good of the team, even though that might not be the same as you. And we needed to rely on each other and be honest and accountable to each other. So we had respect, trust. Third one, commitment. That we were all committing to investing as much time as we could. We needed to make everyone feel empowered with a specific role and a purpose within the team. We needed to commit to being one team. As I said, we were never going to get there if we didn't commit to be a dedicated, determined, disciplined, professional and resilient team. And we needed to commit, I suppose, to the greater good, for not our individual values, but for our team values. So the fourth one for us, this was a huge one for us, and I'm sure it is in your lives, in the careers that you lead, and that is communication. And we needed to agree and follow these values. We know that it's all quite easy sometimes to sit around a nice round table with some sparkling water and going, we need to come up with some values. There's another thing, actually, getting people to follow them and agree with them and believe in them. And we needed to listen and reflect on what was being said by who. Now, this was a huge one for us. And this is what we called agreed preferences. And I think we've all been brought up in the world with these sayings, which is, speak to people the way that you would like to be spoken to. Treat people the way that you would like to be treated. Well, I think this is wrong, because we're all different people, and we all react in different ways in the way that people communicate to us. So these agreed preferences were really looking at who you were talking to and how they wanted to be communicated with. So respect, trust, commitment, communication. And obviously running across all of them was diversity. We were all very different. As we all know, it's very rare for teams to have the same sorts of people in them. And actually, it's those teams that fail a lot of the time. So we realised that our differences brought a uniqueness to us, something that we would rely on going forward to the Paralympics. And I'm not saying it was easy. We were training a ridiculous amount of hours before London, not being paid for it. And I had those days where I just felt like I was hitting my head against a brick wall. And again, I imagine all of you with the demanding careers that you have must feel like that sometimes. And I had a very easy coping mechanism to deal with those days. And it was just an image that I used to store in my head. And it was of my son, Oscar, at the Paralympics, holding up a banner in the crowd. No idea what was going to say on it, but that image really got me through those tough times and gave me a coping mechanism that I felt like I could wake up the next day and carry on. So we worked and worked and worked, and we finally got there to London. And we didn't come back with a medal, but we achieved so much, and we had to balance our expectation with our experience. The short-term goal was to get to London, was to pick up as much experience as we could, But the long-term goal for us was Rio in 2016. And there have been so many amazing memories from that time. I'm sure many of you have them as well, have your own. But for me, one of the best memories was the opening ceremony. And this sums up my number 6 in my power of 7. And that is Team Me. We all have a Team Me, and we're part of someone else's Team Me. My Team Me is made up of my family, my friends, my teammates, my managers, all those healthcare professionals, emergency services, Liz, for saving my life, for putting me back together again. And when I was walking around in front of 80,000 people going mad, I was doing it for them, but also doing it for me, I suppose. So that was a very special night. And this is some of my Team Me here. And I do need to just share this with you, that this was taken, well, the two of these pictures were taken after the first game, the first Paralympic game. I was walking out of a tunnel in Excel Arena in front of 9,000 people. You know, before this point, the biggest crowd we'd ever played to was about 300. So you can imagine, emotions were running high. But I came out this tunnel and I looked over to my left and I saw that image I had in my head of my son, Oscar, with a banner saying, "Go, Mummy, go." And I knew at that point that all the blood, sweat and tears, literally, had all been worth it. Again, interestingly enough, the top left photo, I had friends saying to me, that's my dad, right, behind his banner. Can't see my dad. I had friends saying to me after the first game, "We made the mistake of sitting behind your family." I was like, oh no. Were they really loud? I said, no, I just couldn't see anything through the size of your dad's banner. So that was a great morning. But my 7th and my last, and I believe the most important out of my power of 7 is belief. And I'm not saying the last 10 years have been easy. It's been a roller coaster of a ride, but it's made me who I am today. And it's shaped my Team Me. And we've all become stronger and more resilient from it. And actually, we've all had positives out of it. So for instance, you know, my husband pursued his dream of running his own photography business. My family discovered a strength in each other as a result of that awful time. And my nephew, well, he was well chuffed. I took him to Walton Towers and he realised he didn't have to queue up for any of the rides because I'm in a wheelchair. So, you know, that belief, that strength has all got us through and we've got good things from it. And as I said, I truly believe that I was always meant to make this journey. There are too many coincidences, connections that connect the 7th of July and the Paralympics and the Olympics. Whole reason why I was late that morning is that I'd been out the night before having a few sherbets with work friends. The last thing I was reading on the tube that morning was my paper, and you literally could not turn the page without reading something on the Olympics or Paralympics. And I remember thinking, just before the explosions happened, I've got to get tickets to this. I'm a Londoner. I've got to get tickets to this. And now, you know, I've just come back from taking part. Some people say things happen for a reason, and I can only believe that that is true. So I suppose we all either believe that we don't have a path, a certain path that is mapped out for us, or the other end of the scale is that we do have a path, a fate that we can never change. We obviously can question this forever and never really know. But what we do know is it's not, you know, the path. It's not the path that's the important thing. We may never know our path, and it's the way you deal with it that's the important thing. So I suppose it's not what happens to you that makes the difference. It's what you do with what happens to you. And life changes, doesn't it? Things happen in our lives, good and bad, and we need to accept those changes and adapt and become stronger from it. And there is no doubt at all that my power of 7 has got me through the last 10 years and will hopefully get me through the next 50 or 60 years. So I suppose, do you have a power of 7? Where and when does your own journey start, and what differences can you make? So make today the day you choose to be the best you can. Make today the day you choose to work together to try to look at things differently, I suppose, and inspire your employees and talent to do the same. And please, if you get one thing from this presentation, it is, please believe that anything, absolutely anything is possible as long as you believe. Thank you ever so much, ladies and gentlemen.